Steve.
Thank you, Calvin. Good evening, everyone. Steve Lee, alcoholic. And, what a compliment and an honor to be included in the same category as Don, my sponsor. And I'll talk a little bit. Don's going through a rough patch, and maybe I'll chat a little bit about that, because Don, about 12 years ago, really reintroduced me to the 11th step in a different way. And he didn't do it by telling me what I needed to do. He actually called me one day and said that he was feeling a little stale, and he thought he needed to rededicate himself to the 11th step, and we began to participate in an exercise with each other for a while that he has carried on for many years now. And but he's my sponsor and a wonderful guy. I'm grateful to be on here. Allie, thank you for asking me. I could spend the next 40 minutes just talking about how grateful I am to be here and looking around here and seeing a lot of good friends on the screen. I see you there, Ralph White, and saw my friend Brendan sneak on here, and Roger, and just great to be with so many of you, because I haven't been coming on Zoom very much lately. And but I will talk about what you asked me to talk about. I chose when Allie said that I needed to pick a topic, a theme, if you will, from that 11th step. I went with it as essentially an individual adventure, because that is absolutely my experience. And I will tell you that the adventure continues, that this is a ever evolving part of my recovery. And our literature says that in our personal stories, there may be a wide variation in the way each of us approaches and conceives of that power, talking about God. And I think that approach is perhaps the prayer and meditation. How do I approach this higher power? And my approach changes every so often. I'm a guy that mixes things up, and it has looked different at different times. And I am more and more comfortable with that. Years ago, I know that some of you on here may have used to see that infomercial called P90X that was about, exercise, right? And the guy, the term he used was muscle confusion, right? He said every now and then he would do something different because it would confuse his muscles. He would attack and put come at that muscle from a different angle. And because it had adapted to whatever exercise it had been doing. And I think that with this 11th step, I kind of do some spiritual muscle confusion, if you will, and it's not that God requires me to approach in any different way. It's just for me to sometimes maintain that spiritual alertness, that spiritual awakeness. I have to challenge myself maybe to put a stress on some different spiritual muscles. It says in the 10th step, that I will have entered the world of the Spirit. So when I get through those first 9 steps and I'm at the 10th step, I'm current, I have entered the world of the Spirit. I'm in the foyer, right? I've just stepped in the house. And the 11th step is where I go all the way in, where I continue to fully explore and go in each room. Years ago, and some of you have heard me share a couple of the anecdotes that I will share tonight, but I was resistant. Well, the language I was using was that I was struggling with prayer and meditation in particular. And this was about 18 years ago, and I was at a conference that Howard Poland was at. Many of you know Howard or were familiar with Howard, who's since passed away. And Howard was a devoted practitioner of of meditation. And so I went to Howard and I told him, I said, Howard, I'm struggling with this meditation. And he got excited, because Howard, I knew now we had the next 4 hours covered, right? Because he just loved talking about that. And he says, oh, Steve, he said, he rubbed his hands together. He went, let's go to my room. And we went to his room and we got in there and he said, now, what are you doing now, Steve? And I said, well, Howard, I'm really not doing anything now. And he just laughed. He said, oh, so your problem's not technique, it's commitment. He said, you're not struggling with meditation, you're not meditating. And he said, are you willing to struggle? He says, because for you to struggle with meditation, you've got to create a space and time for that struggle to take place. And what he was really letting me know is what our book says, that in that moment, it was that discipline that was missing, right? Our book says that we are undisciplined and we let God discipline us in this simple way. And that discipline that's talked about around this 11th step isn't like a punitive punishment. It is, can I adopt a disciplined way of life? And I've seen one description of discipline that I really like, and it says it's the difference between what I want now versus what I want most. And see, I far too often trade what I want most for what I want now. And that can certainly happen first thing in the morning, right? On awakening. What do I want most? You ask me that and I will say, oh, I want to deepen this relationship with God. I want to continue to grow in this God consciousness. But what I want now is a cup of coffee and Sports Center, So which am I going to choose, right? Where am I going to go with this? And I will tell you, some days I am more disciplined than others because I know what I want. So it's just like anything in my life. You guys have taught me and driven home the point over and over that in AA, we play the spiritual long game, right? We're playing the long game, and I'm a guy that wants to be prepaid. I'm a guy that wants something right now. And actually, God is ready the moment that I'm ready. But I sometimes will that discipline continues to be where I will struggle. More than lack of belief, more than apathy, more than any lack of faith or any of those things that I want to make a big issue out of sometimes. The truth is I'm often lazy and undisciplined. And am I willing to commit to a discipline, to a regular practice? It's Howard went on to say, because and he said, Steve, why would you, and this goes back to me talking about being in the foyer, just entering the world of the spirit. And he said, why would you do everything that you have done in Alcoholics Anonymous to get here and then not want to spend time? You've been clearing away those things that blocked you off from the sunlight of the spirit. We've been taking these 12 steps so I can establish a relationship with this higher power. So why would you go to the restaurant and not go in and eat the meal? Right? Why don't you come all the way in? And I, I'll be honest with you, I teared up when he was talking about that, and because I had never realized how I was shortchanging myself. That I want to come all the way in and have the spiritual meal to build upon this relationship. In fact, our book tells us that what we are doing in Alcoholics Anonymous, among other things, it says that each of us in our own language and from our own point of view talks about how he established a relationship with God. And I think at our best, certainly at my best, I hope that's what I do, is talk about how I established a relationship. Not tell you who or what God is, and not have to get caught up in what I think you think God is, but how did I establish that relationship? And the 12 steps are the pathway to that connection, to that power. They are not the power. literature says that prayer and meditation are the principal means of conscious contact. You know, how do we, any of us who have, and I have a relationship with many people that are here tonight. And some of those relationships have been longer in the making than others. I know some of you better than others. What is my principal means of building on that conscious awareness of who you are? It is to reach out. It is to spend time with you. It is to ask questions. It is to be curious about you and your life. And so am I willing to expend that same type of energy and curiosity to continue to build upon this relationship with God? This conscious contact is an interesting word to me. I mean, and I the way I apply it is that God has always been, the way I do things today is I don't go in a search for God. I am trying to remove those things that block me from the awareness of God's presence right where I am, to be consciously aware of this higher power in my life, that it is not in my subconscious, not below the level, but I am aware and conscious of this God. And, you know, a few months ago, I came home here. Connie and I live in this little condo, and I came home and I was puttering around. I was back where I am now in my little home office doing some work. And all of a sudden, she came in and it scared me to death. She startled me because I didn't know she was there. I said, I didn't know you were here. And she said, I've been here all along. I've been here ever since you walked in the door. She was just in the other room. And I will tell you that that's the way it is with that higher power, I believe, that power is constantly available, and I'm often not aware. I often don't have that conscious contact. See, everything I'm doing, and so how do I build on this relationship? The thing about the individual adventure is the big book says it would be easy to be vague on this matter, but they believe that they could give some valuable guidance, some good ideas. But the 12 and 12 says, aided by such instruction and example as we can find, it's essentially an individual adventure, but it's that for each one of us to work out in his own way. But its object is always the same, to improve this conscious contact. So I do a host of different things over the years. And most recently, in fact, off and on over the years, I have taken the On Awakening and When Retiring at Night questions, and sometimes I do them in writing and sometimes I don't. I'll tell you, for the last 5 years now, in the mornings, I get up and I do some readings. And then I jot down to contemplate. I find something that catches my attention from a variety of different books that I have. And then I jot down my takeaway from that. I spend a few minutes thinking about it, and I will jot down my takeaway. How do I hope to use that in my day? What does that mean to me? And then I don't answer the question specifically. What I do is I list 2 or 3 things I'm grateful for. I've got a column I call fears and prudent concerns, because everything doesn't rise to the level of a fear. You know, Bill wrote, he said prudence was reasonable concern without worry. But so I say fears or prudent concerns, and I list anything in that day that might be hanging over my head that maybe I have a little anxiety about or that I dread. Some days there's nothing. Usually there's a couple of things. You know, usually maybe something at work has me a little jacked up, or maybe I'm worried about my daughter or something, you know, of a personal nature. Maybe it's as simple as I'm worried that my belly's hanging over my belt, and I don't feel good about the way I look. Whatever self-centered fear might show up, It doesn't have to be something earth shattering, but if I'm sitting there thinking about it, maybe it's worth jotting down. And then it says plans for the day. I'll list 2 or 3 things that I have planned for that day, whether it's work or AA or social, but a couple of things because the book says when planning our day. And I do ask my thinking to be divorced from that selfish, dishonest, and self-seeking motives, because I see the world differently, right? When I do that, when I move those things that block my vision, when I'm looking through the lens of self-pity, of self-seeking, of self-centeredness, of fear, of lust, of pride, of greed, when I look through that lens, it distorts the way I see the world. But in that moment, when I can divorce my thinking, when those things aren't blocking and distorting my vision, I see the world more clearly. And it helps me make my decisions. The book says, right, our thought life will be placed on a higher plane. And so in that moment of connection, maybe I see things a little better. And that's kind of what my mornings look like. I actually had done that. That is the exercise that Don and I started with each other about 12 years ago. I will tell, and then different people began to join in on that, and pretty soon there were 200 or 300 people that were part of that. And I began, and maybe some of you can identify with this, I caught myself doing my writing in the morning to those people. Now I'm no longer sharing my experience. I'm an author writing a self-help book, right? I mean, and that's comical to even think, but I began to think about what you would think about me while you're reading what I wrote. And what should be a spiritual exercise turned into an academic exercise. And so that was now no longer being valuable to me. So I told Don I was going to pull back and stop. And he said, "That's fine, Steve." He said, "But be careful not to lapse into doing nothing." And I said, "Don't worry." And then I prominently lapsed into doing nothing. And I was getting ready to do something, and just very soon I was going to get back in the game. And then I went to, I got a few folks from Colorado on here I've seen. I went up to Aspen, Colorado to a conference up there, and I was speaking on Saturday night. And about 10 minutes into this talk, I noticed that I was completely disconnected from the talk I was giving, and I was completely disconnected from the people I was giving it to. I knew the words to the song, but I just wasn't connected to it. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling I believe I've ever had from behind the podium. And later I was talking to my friend Carl, that many of you know. Carl was there. And, Carl was trying to be polite, and he said, "Steve, it wasn't your best talk, but it wasn't bad, And I said, "Carl, I think you're misunderstanding me, man. I'm not worried about the talk. I'm worried about the guy that was giving the talk." And I flew back home Sunday, and Monday morning I went to a meeting, and it was an 11-step meeting. It was a 12 and 12, 11-step meeting. And I said, "That's it. I was disconnected because I was disconnected," right? If I'm not connected to my higher power, I can't be connected to you. And if I'm not connected to you, it's because I'm not connected to my higher power, because I think those things are inextricably tied together for me, because I don't think there's a separateness there. I think there's a collective consciousness there for me. That's the way I view those things. So I got back and I started doing prayer, and so now the adventure continues, right? I start back up. What am I going to do now? So I started spending some quiet time in the morning and doing some meditation. And then a guy asked me to sponsor him. I mean, I've been sponsoring guys all this time, but it was a new guy. And I suggested to him, I said, for 30 days, I would like you to, in the mornings, do that on awakening exercise that I just shared with you folks. And he got so excited, and he said, "Oh, Steve," he said, "man, that sounds great." He says, "So you do this?" I went, "Well, I do now." And so I started again, and I have done it. I've done it ever since over these last 5 to 6 years. And there are a number of men that I share it with, and they share theirs with me. And I will tell you that two things I believe happen for me. One is that sometimes I feel inspired while I'm doing it. Sometimes I feel really good about doing it. Sometimes I have a great experience, and sometimes it feels like I'm checking a box. But I will tell you that I believe the discipline of doing it has made all the difference. The discipline in this case, day to day, lets me know. And Don, again, who has been referenced here, Don says, just because I don't feel connected doesn't mean I'm not connected. And so if I am doing those things that help me maintain the maintenance of that spiritual condition is critically important. Most recently, I sent to those men that I share that morning exercise with, and many of them share it with me, and somebody would miss and then call me and feel guilty about missing. And I said, you know what, man, life's hard enough. I don't need you feeling guilty like you didn't do your homework, right? This is not a homework assignment. I don't need you to feel like I'm mad at you or somehow disappointed because you didn't do it. I said, some days you're not going to do it. Some days I'm not going to do it. Some days I'm going to do something else. That's okay. Because what I don't want to do is make this feel like a burden. I want to make it feel like a blessing. I want to make it feel like something that I look forward to doing, whatever form that individual adventure is taking on a given day. So I've also incorporated a number of guided meditations into my morning. Sometimes that quiets my head, that gets a little busy. I have to tell you a story that happened pretty recently on this. I'm sponsoring a woman, and she has stage 4 cancer. She's got cancer in breast cancer, liver, and in her blood. And I had shared this guided meditation from a gentleman named David J.I. with her a while back. And she called me one morning, and I'm not going to drop the person's name, but she said, Steve, it came to me this morning to call, John Doe and ask him to take me through the steps. Now, John Doe's a pretty recognizable person to a lot of the people on here, and she does not know him personally, but she said, do you think, she said, I don't know where that came from. And I said, well, certainly you know where it came from. You told me where it came from. You were just meditating. And it came to me. And she said, you think I should call him? I said, absolutely, you should call him. She called him, and he agreed. And then he called me because he didn't have a relationship with her, but he knew I did. She told him he called me to ask about her. And I said, what you don't know is that, and what she doesn't know, is that the guided meditation I gave her was the guided meditation that this John Doe had given me a few months before. So those spiritual threads were connected, if I'm willing to see them. And they started this wonderful exchange with each other. And I also said, I don't think this is going to have a damn thing to do with the steps. I think it has to do with you two need to be having this conversation. And it's been a remarkable experience for me to witness from afar. And I'm the guy that can miss that. See, I'm the guy that's riding down the road and see the sign that says, if you've been looking for a sign from God, this is it. Right? And I go, would you move that sign? I'm looking for God, right? I will step over these God-filled moments that are available to me all the time. Because again, see, I believe what happens for me here when I'm willing to navigate on this adventure in any variety of ways. When our book says that God does not make too tough a terms of those who honestly seek him. If I'm seeking, my technique is not going to matter. If I'm seeking, whether I'm praying on my knees or praying in the shower, it's not going to matter. If I'm seeking, whether I'm doing Western meditation or Eastern meditation, it isn't going to matter, because God's going to meet me where I'm at if I honestly seek him. And what happens is I get this awareness of this higher power. And that awareness just changes. It was read a little earlier, right? It was read in that Appendix 2, that I have this profound alteration in my reaction to life, that I have a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery. The world does not change. My view of the world changes. I'll share this story, and I'll be brief, and I'll end with this, Allie. But and years ago, when the movie Avatar came out, which was the reintroduction of 3D glasses, right? Now movies are 3D all over the place, but I had not seen a 3D movie since they had cardboard. Ralph's old enough on here with me to remember those cardboard glasses you wore to drive in. And but now we're going to this big multiplex surround sound, big screen. I put on these glasses and I'm just fascinated watching this movie in 3D. And then I would take the glasses off and watch the movie for a minute. And just like me taking these glasses off right now, I couldn't pick any of you out of a lineup, right? I see you, but you're blurred. Now I got you, right? No, there's not a thing different about you. The only thing that changed is how I see you. The only thing that changed is those 3D glasses go from a 2-dimensional view to a 3-dimensional. It adds depth. Well, our book talks about in this area that this is where we're going to have a vital sixth sense. And we're going to be rocketed to a fourth dimension. So not just height, depth, and width. Now we've added a spiritual dimension with this God consciousness. And I see things I could not see. And I see things in a different way than I saw them before. You did not change. My experience with you changes. Now, I'll end with this, Allie, that the last story is that now when those of us who I've been sober and active in AA for 33 years. Now, I got to tell you, I hear some people say that every day they wake up with untreated alcoholism, and I don't argue with anybody else's experience. But I don't feel like I wake up with untreated alcoholism, but I do wake up with alcoholism that needs to be treated. I wake up with that daily reprieve that requires a treatment. And what happens is, and once we have gone along this for a while, our book says that if we practice this 11th step, that we will get in touch with this vital sixth sense, that we will begin to have the intuitive thought, that we will come to rely upon it. So when people say they can't trust their thinking, I say, look, I can trust my thinking more than I ever could. Now, and so years ago, and some of you have heard me tell the story, that the challenge I will have now is I will get the intuitive thought and I will shout it down. My ego, my fear, my pride will say, no, that couldn't be right. No, you can't do that. And today I want to listen more. I was coming to Toronto actually 18 years ago. I'm excited to be up there at the ORC conference. It was a big deal, and I felt like a big, important deal for going for all the wrong reasons. And man, I'm excited. I'm packed up. I got my best suit, and I'm at the airport in Nashville, and I'm getting ready to get on a flight to Detroit, where we will then go on to Toronto. In the gate area, there's a woman that was holding a little child, and she was crying inconsolably, talking to the gate agent. I didn't know what that was about, but we got on this little plane. It was a small, commuter jet, maybe 50, 60 seats. I don't know. And a few minutes later, the flight attendant gets on and she says, this woman's brother has been critically injured in a car accident in Detroit. She's trying to get there to his bedside, hospital side. Would anyone be willing to give up their seat? Well, immediately I knew the right thing to do was to give up my seat. Intuitively, I knew. And then I started thinking, I started thinking that, wait a minute, they've paid for this flight. And if I get off, I'm not going to get where I'm going. I'm not going to get there in time to give my talk. And if I don't give my talk in Toronto, the whole AA as we know it could disappear in Canada. And and I'm thinking and thinking and thinking. And as I'm thinking, they closed the door and no one gave up their seat. And we went on to Detroit. That night, I'm speaking at that big conference, and I'm standing up there in front of however many people that is, a couple of thousand people, knowing that the guy they thought they invited would have given his seat up. The guy they thought they'd see, I will pass on an opportunity to practice spiritual principles to go somewhere and talk about them. And you guys, that intuitive thought and the commitment that I make to myself coming back from that weekend was I was going to begin to listen to that intuitive voice. And I'm going, as our book says, and I'm going to make mistakes. And I make huge mistakes. But here's the news. I was making mistakes already. I'm just going to make them based on trusting that voice rather than not trusting. And what I find is more and more when I'm willing to listen, as our book says, when I truly ask God for that direction, when going through the day, when doubtful or agitated, I ask for the right thought or idea, it seems to come. So I just have to be the one that is willing to honestly seek him. For me, over these 33 years, that has happened a variety of different ways. It has been an individual adventure, but it has never been an adventure that I've had to go. That doesn't mean I go it alone. I go it individually. And I share that experience with you, and you shared your experience with me. And as a result, my sobriety is enriched. And that relationship with God and that relationship with you is stronger than it's ever been. And for that, I'm very grateful. And Allie, thanks for having me.
Come on up. Tracy, unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm sorry, I can't come off video.
Oh, no problem. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. I was wondering if you would be interested in sharing the prayer that Dawn shared with your friend and you, and then your friend, and you shared with your friend.
Oh, it was a meditation.
Oh.
And again, it was the gentleman was named David G, that's J-I, and he has a number of guided meditations. Again, this isn't AA by any stretch. That's but that is, as our book says, they're a treasure trove of information, both in our libraries and now available to us online. We're very fortunate to be able to cast a broad net on those things that we might find that are useful to us. So if you're of a mind, you can certainly pull that up online and listen to a few of his and find what's useful for you, if anything.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Steve. Joel M., please come on up. Unmute yourself. Oh, you might have lost them. Did we lose you? Oh, you can't unmute yourself. Okay, no problem. Teresa, please unmute yourself.
Teresa, alcoholic. Thank you so much, Steve. You mentioned listening to that intuitive voice, right? Being on the plane. And then from there, moving forward, committed to listening to it. Could you tell a story or two or when you did listen to it and it was almost like the phenomenon? Because that continues to solidify, right? When we do that and we begin to kind of stretch that spiritual muscle, how it becomes more and more familiar. So is there something that you did listen? It was like, see, that's why I should.
Well, one of the things that I am much more prone to do is if someone or something comes to me in meditation, just like it did the woman I was talking about, I will tend to make that phone call or reach out to an individual just to touch base with them rather than let that moment pass. And sometimes it makes no sense why this person or this situation, might show up. And so that's one of the ways, Teresa, that has manifested. It also shows up for better or worse. To be honest with you, often when I'm talking in this type of, whether it be from behind the podium or at my home group or whatever, that I am prone to take a right or left turn sometimes when I'm giving a talk, and if something shows up, I talk about it. Now, the joke that I sometimes make is it may be divinely inspired or it may be self-indulgent, and I sometimes don't know till I'm done, But I've become more and more willing to risk saying what shows up rather than just trying to color inside the lines all the time.
Thank you, Teresa. Ralph White, unmute yourself. Please come on up.
They give you those.
My name is Ralph White. I'm an alcoholic. I'm going to talk really fast. I was hesitant. I want to, but Leslie's behind me doing a meeting, Steve, so you probably hear Leslie back there. So let me get this in a couple of times. In terms of your meditation practice and your prayer practice, when faced with, let me just give some specifics. When faced with situations like your daughter and like your current spouse, situations where there's a lot of uncertainty, maybe some fear surrounding those situations, is there anything specifically that you do either in prayer or meditation, or do you just organically let what happens happen?
That's another thing, Ralph, that sometimes will change day to day and or over time. I will tell you that my prayers typically, though, have changed over the years. I think as our book directs us to asking how can I be most helpful and useful in this situation, and asking for peace for whomever I might be praying for. I tell you, we joke around here. My wife Connie is much more disciplined than me, and Connie has about an hour and 15-minute practice that she goes through in the mornings, and she has a list of people she prays for, right? And I said, baby, keep me up toward the top of your list before you get tired, so we still got some spiritual juice. And I kid, like, we'll be headed to the mall. She might pray for a parking place, and I say, my God doesn't do parking places, but dial your guy up because we could use a good place. And so it's interesting how it's even that adventure is even different in our own home and those approaches, yet we don't find anything contradictory about that. But specifically to your question, Ralph, it is much more now, how can that help me help them, and or help them have the strength and peace of mind to navigate whatever situation it might be, and rather than try to pray to change a circumstance.
Thank you, Ralph. Lorraine, please unmute yourself. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Philip, you have to unmute them, brother. They can't unmute themselves, so you have to unmute them.
I don't have the option to unmute them. Sorry. I can ask to unmute.
There we go. Tried. Hi. Thank you, Philip. My name is Lorraine. I am an alcoholic. Oh, Steve, that was such a wonderful talk. Every week I come here to get my spirit lifted for the whole week. It's so good. But I really appreciate what you said about, because I think I just passed on my first birthday of sobriety. So I'm like 393 days today. Who's counting me? And, but I appreciate what you said, because I do that practice every morning of the 86 to 88 in the big book. And when people say that about my thinking, I can't trust my thinking, I read that and I say, but it says right here that I can trust my thinking when I put it, more on the, give it to God, and my thought life gets elevated. So I so appreciate you saying that. And not that I wake up with untreated alcoholism. I wake up with alcoholism and I treat it. It's semantics, but it's important. That's an important semantic to me. And the other thing, and this I learned actually from Don, and you just referenced it, was the fact that we get these little spiritual awakenings and we get these intuitions and they happen. And he said to me, you write notes and you take notes down, in meetings, and it's so great and you love reading them. But why don't you take one of those notes that you write down and find an action for that in your life so that you make that real for you? And it's not just, something you wrote down that sounded good. You can put a practice of it into your life and then it becomes usable. So, but anyway, I wish I had a question. I can never think of questions till it's later. But thank you so much. I really appreciate being here. And I loved hearing you tonight.
Thank you so much, Lorraine.
Lorraine, as long as you lead by saying nice things about me, you can talk anytime. And I will tell you that from what you were just talking about, though, is a gift that Don gave me as well. And one of the practices I haven't mentioned here that I used to do that I don't do as often, but that Don does. And that is have a list of those principles you're talking about. It might be kindness. It might be honesty. It might be persistence. It might be compassion. It might be love. And he will have those on slips of paper and randomly draw one out. And that will be the keynote for the day. And then he will say, okay, how do I take this out into my day? And so there's the thing he shared with you is something that he actually does himself. So thanks for reminding me of that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Josie, please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Josie. I am an alcoholic and wonderful. Really enjoyed your talk. And yeah, I just wanted to say that you really have given me something to talk about because, meditation, and I've been sober a long time, but it's still a struggle, and one of the things that you really made me think about that I've never heard before was what you said about, what do I want now versus what I want more? Yeah. And also, I remember a long time ago, I gave a talks in Florida. And I was so disconnected also, and I could really feel it. And my best friend was with me, and I got off and gave my talk, and I looked at him and I said, I bored myself. I did. I was like, oh my gosh. But what I've realized is that for me, it's the language of the heart. When we are connected with the higher power, I can really, I can speak to another alcoholic and it really comes true because I'm more connected, with that person. I'm connected with my higher power. But what I wanted to know is, did you say David J.I. or G.I.?
J.I.
J.I. Okay. But what I wanted to know was how long did it take for you to really get into the groove of meditation? I've gone for periods of time where I've been really good, and then I'll back off, and and then I have to get into the practice again, and it's always that fight of what do I want? Do I really want to meditate, or do I want to go, like in the summer, for example, like spend a lot of time in my yard because I'm a gardener, and so I'm tempted to get right on it, So anyway, yeah, just so how long did it take you to really, and also I live in Cleveland.
Well, I'll report back when that happens, Josie, when I have mastered it or when that consistency is there. I would say that the consistency is there, but the experience is a little different day to day that I'm having. But I don't know that makes a big difference in the big scheme of things, because the action, you guys from day one have been telling me my actions more important than how I feel, and that those actions will inform my feelings rather than before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, my feelings always informed my actions, and usually in a negative way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Josie. Nicole, please come on up and unmute yourself.
Good evening, all. I'm Nicole, and I am an alcoholic. I'm glad to be here tonight, and very glad always to be reminded that I have a soul. I am a soul. I don't get to think about it nearly often enough. So, Steve, thank you for that, and thank you for the way you have of taking these big spiritual principles and breaking them down and making them practical and approachable. I appreciate that. My question for you is, you mentioned about synchronicity and guideposts, and I'm wondering how it is that you determine what is coming from a spiritual source and what is coming as a guidepost, what is coming from ego. Have you gotten any better at that over the years? Because I still mix them up. Thanks.
Well, I think I have gotten better, Nicole, but case by case, it's hard to know. That is in the Serenity Prayer. I think that, when it says the wisdom to know the difference is the third of the three, that wisdom is usually born of experience. And so I will see where something was maybe ego driven that I thought was, had a more spiritual, was a spiritual guidepost. I do take the perspective today when I decide that God is everything or God is nothing, and I have chosen to adopt the perspective that everything is spiritual. So it's again, how am I looking at it? Am I seeing the God in everything? Am I seeing the spiritual component of everything? It is there. So do I have the glasses on or the glasses off? And the book tells me what will obstruct my relationship, this connection, is pomp, worship of other things, and calamity, right? And pomp is that reemergence of pride and ego that will then block me off, and I don't realize that I'm flying solo again, that I'm not including God in this decision making. That self-centeredness is again, I'm an extreme example of self-will, but I don't realize it. That calamity is anything I've decided can't be happening to me, and worship of other things is anything that I have decided is more important. And I should even say have decided that is more important, that I have allowed to sneakily become more important than that relationship with God. And that could be a relationship or money or work, or on a given day, something else becomes the most important thing to me. And I don't realize that when that happens, I'm operating it without God. And so I think I'm connected and disconnected all day long, 1,000 different times. I'm like a bad light in your house that blinks all the time, and it's just, and I'm trying to get that connection a little better and where it stays a little longer.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Nicole. Calvin, please come on up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Calvin. I'm still an alcoholic. And Steve, thank you so much, man. And I really like the story about when you flew, from Tennessee to Detroit, and then you got on a little plane. Before you got on a little plane, when a woman cried, and you got there, and I've been in that position many times, and not many times, but a few times I've been there, and they always come get me later, right? And I think about it. At that moment, I make a decision based on self, right? But later on, it comes because my spirit keeps troubling me, but I'm getting better at it, right? And I really love when you talk about that, because I could identify so strongly with that, and that's why I love men who talk like you, because you don't tell me about what you tell me exactly how we think as alcoholics and how we work as alcoholics. And it makes me not feel alone, but what I really want to ask you is when you get them intuitive thoughts, because I get a lot of intuitive thoughts now. I pray and meditate a lot, man. A lot of intuitive thoughts. And you talked about one. I said, do you have another intuitive thought when things, when God or your higher power come to you in a thought, in your intuitiveness, and showed you another path, or showed you where you need to go in the direction, that next step thing, Could you talk about that just a touch?
Well, Calvin, as I sit here right now, a big colorful story is not showing up, but I will tell you what my experience has been. And a couple other people mentioned it, that Don just regularly talks about taking the next right stitch. And I think that intuitive thought isn't always me navigating some complex labyrinth of worldly problems. It is simply doing and having a clear picture of what that next right thing is. And we say that so often, and do the next right thing, that I can lose sight of what a daunting call to action that is. The next right thing. I keep getting ready to do the next right thing next time, and but right now I got to do this thing because I'm afraid not to. Because I got to manage things, and so that intuitive thought for me of that guidance, if you will, is much more often being willing to take that next step. If you guys will indulge me, another quick story, and it's a Howard Poland story, but it's again about how to live my life a day at a time. And Howard used to tell the story of his life, and many of you've heard it, my life on a frozen lake, and talk about approaching life like a man walking across a frozen lake, afraid with every step that the ice was going to crack and he would fall through and drown, and how angst driven that walk would be. And I told Howard that I had improved on this story, which he did not agree with, by the way, for action, but he's not here, so he can't defend himself. And I said that in my story, Howard, there are two guys walking across the frozen lake, and one of them absolutely was faithful in the belief that the ice was going to hold him and would not crack, and the other one afraid with every step that the ice was going to crack and they would fall through and drown. And they started their walk across the frozen lake. And sure enough, halfway across, the ice cracked and they both fell through and drowned. But the guy who thought the ice was going to hold him had a much nicer walk up until then. And so one of the ways to that intuitive thought is me deciding to enjoy the walk rather than be afraid with every step, that to live a life on high alert, which is exhausting. And my brain, my ego is designed to look for trouble. My ego sees trouble everywhere, while that faithfulness in God is I still have to look both ways before I cross the street to see if there's oncoming traffic, but I'm not there 3 days later because I'm afraid to go across, right? So that's one of the ways I just try to trust that guidance. And sometimes I get hit by an oncoming car, and sometimes I get across the street okay,
Okay, thank you, Calvin. Sherry, please unmute yourself.
Hey everybody, I'm Sherry. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey there, Sherry.
You guys get to see this beautiful Nashville night. I'm out at the park with my dog. Steve, hi. So good to hear you as always. I actually have 3 questions. And you may have said it, but when you talk, I always have so much to think about when you say something. So I may have missed it. So you said you read a couple of things in the morning. Could you say what they are, other than 86, 87, 88? Also, how long do you meditate for? Do you have a time limit? Or do you set a time for yourself? And then I don't know if all these years I've ever known this. Did you come into AA 33 years ago with a God? And thank you, all you good and faithful servants, for this beautiful meeting for 3 years. Thank you, everybody.
Well,
okay, I'm done.
You've given me another 40 minutes to talk, Sherry, but
all right.
But quickly answered, I did not come in with a God, and there's a much longer story around that, but I did finally find and continue a conception that continues to evolve over time. I didn't pray for the first, several months. I wouldn't hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. So that was a challenge for me. Appendix 2 that was read earlier was the gateway that allowed me to finally find language that worked for me. In the mornings, what I do is a version of the On Awakening, but it is basically, as I said, I list a couple of things I'm grateful for, a couple of things that I might be a little anxious about that day, if there is anything, and 2 or 3 things that I have planned for the day. And then there's a reading. I will find something to read and contemplate a little bit and jot down my thoughts about it. I do that. And then thirdly, there is no time. In fact, I can't tell you how often I've set a timer for 10 minutes and start opening one eye at 7.5 minutes, thinking surely it's been 10 minutes by now. And I just don't beat myself up over that either. I just do what I can do, you know.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. Carrie's iPad, please unmute yourself. Carrie's iPad. I sending it over to you. That's okay. We can, if you can't unmute yourself, that's okay. Don't worry. Roy B, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. I'm Roy. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for your share. I was just listening intently, but listening to your share, I did write something down about your higher power is always there. I am not consciously aware, just like when you talked about your wife for being in the other room. And when I took the 7-step prayer and asking my Creator to have all of me, good and bad, the go-to is always make a prayer when things are bad. Can you share just a minute on maintaining your constant conscious contact with your higher power when things are good?
Well, I'll tell you something I have been doing off and on for the last few months. And again, I'm sharing, we're in a virtual AA meeting, but we're talking about a subject that takes us sometimes outside the scope of our own literature, and we're encouraged to do that. And Emmett Fox has a writing called The 7-Day Mental Diet. He's actually got a book called The Power of Constructive Thinking. But the 7-Day Mental Diet is about being relentlessly positive. And it sounds like a parlor trick, and it's a little bit also like his golden key that many people are familiar with. But I really have become more and more, I think, to your question, Roy, aware when things are good, and not that I am less likely to be complacent in the good times now than I used to be, because my gratitude is I'm more conscious of that gratitude than I've been before, and not in a way that I've just got my way. I was just on a meeting earlier today, and there were 2 people on that meeting that I know well that have been given less than a year to live. And as we talked, one of the things over the last few months with these people that have become clear to me is I'm less willing than ever to spend time wasting time being afraid, being resentful, petty stuff, that I'm just more and more God consciously aware that today is the gift. And am I going to embrace this day, or am I going to view it like it's a burden? And some days I wake up and life feels like a problem to solve. And some days I wake up and it looks like a gift to embrace. And that's all about my point of view, not what's going on in my life typically.
Okay, thank you, Roy. Joel M., please unmute yourself.
Work this time. My name is Joel. I'm a real alcoholic, and I'm recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Steve, I had so much identification with you, especially the part about it keeps on changing. And sometimes, I wake up in the morning, and one of the habits I have given myself is to ask God to direct my thinking as soon as I open my eyes. But usually I don't get to meditate until a few hours later, because I'm boxing around the house, and I stop beating myself up about it. I have reestablished a relationship with a sponsee I took through the work 25 years ago. And I moved here to Arizona 11 years ago, and I lost contact with him. And I've recently reestablished contact with him because I noticed that he doesn't sound like he's on the AA beam. And so I've been talking to him about 11-step stuff. And I had a sponsor many years ago who warned me about the arrogance of sobriety. And at that time, I thought it meant, oh, I'm so sober, I don't have to do service work, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that as much. But what I've discovered in my friend Jimmy is now I'm having a hard time getting through to him. As a matter of fact, he said something today which kind of hurt me, and I really have to take a good look at myself. He says something to the effect of, I don't like people telling me I'm doing it wrong. And I said, I'm sorry if that's what you heard from me. All I want to do is, bring back the Jimmy that I love. You used to be so in love with this program, and now you sound like you're off the beam. How do you approach somebody with long-term sobriety that has that arrogance of sobriety?
Wow. Well, man, everything is case by case, Joel. And again, asking God for some clarity and the intuitive thought. I will tell you a couple of things. I am much less likely to give unsolicited help than I've ever been. And to evoke my sponsor, Don, again, Don says that unsolicited advice is always received as criticism. So despite my good intentions, and even if I'm right, it feels like self-will is what is driving the boat there. I want you to do better, even if I say it's for your sake. So I'm much less likely to do that. It is hard when it's someone you care and love, and I'm the worst at it in my family. And I have tried to help my daughter more than once, and I think I'm being very subtle in the way I approach it. And she would suggest I do it with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. And basically what she hears when I'm doing that is, you think there's something wrong with me. You're telling me. And so I think we always fall back to, we will tell you what we have done rather than what you should do. And we're attraction rather than promotion. And I'm just not very good at finger wagging anymore.
Okay, thank you so much, Joel. That concludes the queue. Oh, Ali, there you go, buddy. Come on up.
We had a couple of minutes left. I'm going to thank you, Philip. Thank you, Steve, so much, brother, for a beautiful, powerful talk. I appreciate you coming to this meeting. I know how busy you are, and you sort of made an exception for us. The Zoom meeting that's still on after 3 years. I wanted to, first of all, thank you very much. I just, you have a very unique gift in the way you communicate, and you unpack your spiritual walk just so beautifully, in a way that just, in such a humble way that even if I don't agree with something you're saying, the way you describe it, the energy you bring to it, I'm just so open to considering what you're saying. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you doing that. There's few people that do that in the way you do. Thank you so much. My question for you is this. I know you're a very smart man, and I'm pretty sure you're an avid reader. I'm really curious to see, of all the books that you have that you have been drawn to, spiritual books, what are the two most impactful? I know you referred to a couple, but what are the two most impactful spiritual books for you? And maybe you can touch on them. What ways have they changed your recovery or sobriety, spiritual life?
The two books, Ali, that I go to most often, outside obviously of our AA literature, but is The Spirituality of Imperfection, and a little book called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And both of those, and Love is Letting Go of Fear is a simple little book by a guy named Jablowski, and to tell you the truth, it incorporates some of the tenets of A Course in Miracles, and it was given to me over 25 years ago. And I will tell you that the group of men that I send out that little morning text, and what I write, what I read, and what I write, last week I was pulling everything from that book, a little snippet from that book. I never referenced the book. And for the first time in over a year, 5 or 6 of the different guys texted back, please tell me what book that's from. So it was resonating with those men as well. And it's a simple book with kind of goofy cartoons in it and stuff like that, but it has, my fears are usually pretty simple and goofy. So it's just the right reference point for me. I've done everything but color in it, man.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate everything you had to share. It concludes the Q&A part of our meeting, and I'll hand it back to Teresa.